So this is an untexted, unprepared, improvised introduction about who I am a little bit and what I want to do. Preferably not alone. I've got an amiable partner in crime in mind who will share the burden. But yeah, essentially this is an opportunity to express some thoughts, not as a specialist or an expert, but simply an opinionated member of the planet, to comment upon events and issues of the time, reflect upon historical events, perhaps political events on occasion, sporting, social, economic, life-related. Yeah, the inspiration, I suppose, in many ways comes from the fact that I've pulled back personally from social media because of the amount of hate that was expressed, and I think it's possible to be critical without expressing hatred. And yeah, I want to be critical, and I don't want to express hatred in the process, and simply as an indicator of how it's possible to accomplish this. Well, I guess the main motivation for me is growing up. I used to watch a program called Midnight Caller, which had this sort of midnight DJ called Jack Killian, and he was a former police officer who, for some reason, no longer wanted to continue in the force, though I'm sure there was a backstory which I've forgotten now. But anyway, he would come on at night and essentially would help people address their problems, and he always addressed, or the program always addressed, issues of social importance at the time. And yeah, I think in the first few episodes they discussed the spread of HIV and AIDS. They interviewed a person on death row. There are lots and lots of really important issues which are still prevalent in today's society. Obviously, it was an American take on things. I myself am a Brit of ethnic origin, which is not British. It's Armenian. But I've lived in Italy for 4 years, and I've lived now where I currently live in Berlin in Germany. So my perspective is going to be mostly European, so therefore of Western emphasis. But I do also have some Middle Eastern opinions, shall we say, sources from sort of relatives, friends, people who I've encountered while growing up. I don't have Far Eastern, should we say, opinion which has matured or formulated within me. I'm just simply saying these things so that you understand that there are probably going to be biases involved, as much as I would like to claim neutrality. That's not really viable. I think we all have certain prejudices. We all have fixed ways of doing things. We all have ideas about how life should be lived, how people should consider one another, what political system is the best, what the price of milk should be, or a slice of pizza, or a good coffee. Obviously, there are more important things, but just to say that there are any number of issues that people would have alternating opinions on, and I just wanted to give you my background. What have I learned in my travels? Can't really call them travel. I'm not really a very well traveled person, but I've lived in 3 countries if you include the country of my birth, which is the UK. I was born in London, and clearly one of the things that you have to say about the UK is that London is not representative of the vast majority of the country. I can't even say I've travelled particularly well in the UK. I think my life was far too limited to London. I have gone further north than Watford, which may come as a surprise to some northerners. I actually played football with a group of northerners, and I have to say they were probably the most heartwarming, amusing group of individuals I've ever encountered. And I don't think I've ever been accepted into a British group of people as quickly as they took me in. I almost felt adopted after the first training session. And that was just a great experience. And in fact, in many ways, it was something which perhaps prepared me for life in Italy, where people were also extremely warm, extremely welcoming. Um, that was the north of Italy, so I can only imagine that Sicily and Napoli would have been perhaps even warmer in their welcome. But I never ventured that far south, so I can't comment upon it. But I had a few students from Sicily and Napoli, and yeah, really, really, great people. And in Germany as well. So I've been welcomed with open arms in Berlin. People are very friendly. People want to live. People want to enjoy living. They have obviously their own way of doing this and achieving this outcome. It's very different to the British way. It's very different to the Italian way. It's different to the Armenian way, I guess. Even though I never really experienced the Armenian way, as in I grew up as a Brit. So yeah, there are lots of things to talk about. So that's just a little introduction into who I am. What I would like to do, this is in a developmental process, so things will likely change. There are going to be themed episodes. I'm really hoping to be joined as soon as possible by my partner in crime, who I play basketball with. So we share a passion, at least in sport. He's a lot better than I am, so I'm always sort of chasing his tail as he sort of leaps off down the court, and yeah, so there's a bit of competition there, which that may come out in our discussions. But there's definitely respect, at least from my part as well. So anyway, we're going to look to expand things. Hopefully, bring in some other individuals. Both being male means that our show is lacking somewhat in the necessary diversity. We will try to address that, of course. It's important to state that we are mindful of the fact that there is the gender imbalance, but that is in no way something that was planned. It's just one of those things, and we will highlight it, and hopefully be able to introduce somebody who will counter that imbalance. Not to worry. So, man, there's some shit in the world called Corona. Apparently, in the USA, you've got a name for it called the Rona. I didn't realize that you'd given it an affectionate nickname. Um, but you had it.
Yeah, man, I had it. Let's see, I think I started having symptoms on the 17th of
Mm.
December, and I was like sweating, and well, I just felt like, whoa, I'm a little hot. I was at my friend's house, and I was like, well, I'm a little like hot, and they're like, whoa, open the window, and and then he kind of made fun of me, like, oh, you're just, like, I don't know why you're, take your shirt off or something, and then like these two dudes took their shirts off, and I was like, well, this is weird, and I started feeling like super tired, and um I was like, all right, I'm going home. I just don't feel well. The next day, like I was okay, a little like I thought I was like hungover,
Mm.
and I just was like, I would just get like, hot every other hour or something, like sweat, and then it's just slowly. The next day I had a little dry cough, a little more dry cough, and then I got this massive headache, and I was getting ready to go to the U.S. on that Monday, and I got this headache, and I thought it was like from stress, and just being like, oh my God, like, do I really have this global virus? And then I went and got tested, and I got tested twice, and they're like, yeah, positive, and I was like, whoa. Yeah, it is no joke, man. I can see where it can go south for people who are like older, unhealthy, and have pre-existing conditions.
Yeah, I mean, from the stories that I've read, yeah, that's borne out completely that it can go south very quickly and very tragically. But um, even for those who recover, from what I've read, it can take months before you actually feel physically normal. I mean, you're over it now, I guess. But I mean, how do you feel? Do you still feel this like an element of weakness?
Yeah, I mean, I have a cough, like a chronic cough. Um, Yesterday, after I went out for the first time in like 2 weeks, like actively outside of my like a 2 block radius, uh,
Mm.
I started to get like a headache again. Um, my back hurts every once in a while because there's a lot of inflammation in your joints and stuff, and like that was, I mean, like I think the first morning I woke up after I really had it, like I could barely walk, to the bathroom. It's like whoa, like just my knees felt swollen, like cracking, like wow, a little off, like my balance was a little off. So
I mean, they also say this thing is very hardcore on the lungs. So, the fact that you're coughing perhaps, reflects that. But I mean, if you had been a smoker, so I mean, I smoked for a long time, so I no longer do. But do you think some for people who smoke, this could be, you know, really, really bad?
yeah, I definitely think it would affect them. 'Cause I could like one day I went for like a really long walk, like an hour walk. I just couldn't sit inside anymore, and I got back and like I was breathing, and then when I would take like a full breath, you could feel like sharp pain in my lungs.
Mm.
I was like, wow, like and I read that it scars the inside tissue of your lungs.
Yeah, a bit like a sort of rewiring. It sort of messes up that sort of the threads, as it were. Obviously I'm not a doctor, but yeah, the consequences could be, yeah, harrowing for the lungs.
Also, it made me think about like some of these athletes who have it. I just saw that like they canceled the Fulham game, and I also think it's funny how like the UK, like the Premier League, is just kind of trying to ignore it. Like, oh, we're just gonna cancel, but like they're not saying what's going on. It's like it's not that big of a deal. But
Have,
in the U.S. sports, they canceled. They didn't cancel. They postponed American football game, and it was like huge news. Like it was the first time in ever been postponed.
but so the Fulham game has now officially been postponed, has it? Oh, okay, because I'd heard rumors about it since yesterday, but I didn't know it had been now. Okay,
It must have been a huge outbreak.
yeah. Well, I
Everyone,
mean, the same thing happened with Newcastle and City, didn't it? Earlier. So, oh, bit of feedback there. Um, but I mean, there is a certain importance to these sporting events, aren't there? Especially in the time of lockdown. So, people are unable to go out. They are not able to partake in, the sort of normal activities you would associate with this period. Going out shopping, going to cafes, going to restaurants, meeting friends, parties, bars, pubs, discos, and so on. But what perhaps gives us a sense of normality and perhaps a bit of entertainment is the sport. You know, if it's football, if it's American football, if it's basketball or hockey or tennis or whatever else. Um, the we do kind of see these sports people as our, sort of modern day gladiators, our heroes, people which we, who we aspire to be in some way. So, to see them and what they do affected by the same thing, kind of, well, it has an additional effect on our psyche or our collective psyche, I think. So maybe this is why they really want to push ahead, but um, it's tough, man, isn't it?
Yeah,
Dealing with that.
but I really feel because like the first lockdown, there was no sports or anything, and that was like torture for a lot of people. Um, like you couldn't watch. There's nothing to watch. I mean, like I could only watch so many movies,
Hmm.
and for most like males above 25 to 55, who their biggest hobby is watching sports and keeping up with sports teams.
Mm, mm,
And once that part of your life is like kind of eliminated, you're just like, that's my hobby. Like that's what I'm passionate about. I keep up with the stats. I keep up with the players, what the players are, doing,
mm,
injured, and you just that's like your main thing in life. And I think once you take that away from people, it's like it's eye opening, and they don't know what to do. Then they have to find other things to entertain them. Like I mean, I guess some people watch sports just to watch, but I mean, I'm more of a junkie where like I want to know about like where they're from, what club they grew up playing for, their influences like that. And I think that also depicts the storyline of the game and makes it um, more interesting for me.
mm. But I mean, there are alternatives, aren't there? As in, there is this argument that perhaps should be considered that, we do perhaps overdo the sports side. Maybe this is, escapism in extremism. And it's good to come back and, read, spend time with friends. Okay, that's also not quite possible at the moment. But reading, perhaps watching a few, documentaries in addition to series of movies. There are other things that can entertain us and enlighten us, no?
Yeah,
Surely.
true. I mean, this week it was my second. I mean, it was really like house arrest. I really felt like my freedom has been taken away,
Hmm.
and I'm being policed by the world almost. Like I'm like illegal. If I go out in public and I infect somebody and they get sick and die, like I'm liable.
Hmm.
And that really, at some point, put me in like perspective of just like, well, like I'm locked in. I'm on house arrest. I've been arrested by the world and this virus, and I can't do anything. And I look back at last week. Mentally, I had to just like I just couldn't handle a lot of stuff, like understanding it. So I didn't really do too much. And I look back at like what I did every day and like, man, like the days just turned into it was just the same repeat actions every day. And it was just like, wow, this is crazy. But then like this week, I started thinking and I was like, I need to be more creative with my time. And and also I realized like I have the argument like some people just don't have this idea of working like they don't want to work. It takes away their free time. And I'm more of the person who like I like working. It keeps me busy. It's also a social element for me,
Mm.
and it keeps my mind like focused on something. And I guess everybody's built differently, but I've also loved like I like art and I like music, and I want to be more creative with that because I do envy those types of people who have careers and like videographers and people work in movies and people work in music and produce. And I started listening to a lot of podcasts of like Rick Rubin. Do you know who he is?
No.
Rick Rubin is this Jewish white guy from Queens, and he was going to New York University in like 1978, like NYU.
Okay.
And he is, in a long story short, he is one of the guys who found like the Beastie Boys, LL Cool J, and like one of the pioneers of rap and hip hop.
Okay.
And him and like him and Russell Simmons started Def Jam Records. Well, he started Def Jam, and then Russell Simmons came in. But then I started looking into like, and he's like super cool guy. You know, he has a huge beard, white beard, and you know he knows every rapper and artist in the world, or like his friends. You know, and it's like so hard to believe like this Jewish white kid was behind like making
Mm.
rap popular because, but he says like in these podcasts, he's like it wasn't cool until the white kids in the suburbs started listening to it, you know, and that's when it became accepted, you know, because really they were trying to stop it because it was like, you know, these black kids talking about their environment and
Mm.
and trying to empower themselves, you know, with it through their music and expressing themselves that way, you know. And it's just amazing to see like the progression of it, you know, in the 80s into the 90s and every part like in like every single part, he's still doing records today for these like for Coldplay and these big artists, you know, like people are reaching out to him just to help to produce because he just knows what the sound is and like what
Okay.
you want to hear that's popular.
But this, I mean, okay, what I think was termed in some ways gangster rap. I mean, this was like really, yeah, this was rap with a real story. I mean, there was a lot of depth to that. There's a lot of sort of political outpouring. So obviously, there's a surprise when you find out that this was inspired not by a person of African origin.
Yeah. And I wouldn't say it's inspired, but it wasn't. He was able to sell it to the culture. You know, he was able to sell it to
Okay.
mainstream, and that's what they needed. And it's funny. It's still like it still goes back to like like this exploit. You know, people talk about people exploiting like black, um, you know, culture, and
Mm,
like the guy who's behind like you know magnifying it and getting it sold is a Jewish white kid
mm.
who's
Well,
going to
was he?
something else. You know, he was doing something totally else. But he was into like the punk rock and the metal scene, and then he started hearing like um you know, like these guys rapping because he was in New York in the city, and he was like, "Wow, like, this is crazy, this is great." And he started producing for him, and then like the Beastie Boys, when he found them, they were more of a band playing more punk stuff, and he was like, "Look, if you guys go more into the hip hop rapping, it's gonna be huge." And look at the Beastie Boys, you know, like, and he was able to tap into both cultures, and then that's when like white people are like, "Whoa, look, like." There's white guys like we can relate to them because before like you have you know black guys and you know, Hispanic guys talking about growing up in the Bronx or you know in their neighborhoods. It was hard for everybody to relate to it, but
Mm.
you know,
I read an article which was an interview of the singer of the Fine Young Cannibals, Gift, I think his name
Mhm.
I should say, and based upon his experiences in the UK, he said that his difficulties, as it were never race based but class. Um, is that similar in the US, or do you think in the US it's no, it's race based. It's not just class, it's race.
I would it's two separate things because I mean, there's systematic racism that affects people that doesn't affect their class. That's an issue, but I would say, especially from my experience, personal experience, that if you're from a certain class, being it from a minority class, you do have some better opportunities just because of the people you're surrounded by are educated and they have those experiences. So you're able to learn and you know, they're pushing you, they're showing you like, hey, you know, you don't have to do this, you know, very different. But then in the general race thing, when you get to these like places, these universities and these office buildings and trying to apply for the job, they don't really see what your parents did. You know, they only see like your race, your color. You know,
Mm. Yeah.
because like I mean, if I look at my family, like I think my grandmother didn't go to college because she had to go to the war broke out, and her sister did go to college for teaching. And this is 19. She's born 1924, so it's like 40, whenever she was 17. Do the math.
Okay. Yeah.
So the war was breaking out. So she went to work at the Pentagon, and she was working on those big giant computers. Like so, because she was black, the only thing she could do was do numbers. So she was just adding numbers together for the Air Force, so they could, whatever they were using these giant machines at the first computers to add up to do. I don't know what they were doing exactly, but they used like black women to type in the numbers and to count the numbers and add. So
There
they
was a
were
story about this, about the black ladies at NASA, without whom
exactly. So
they would.
that's what she was. So
Okay.
uh, it's called, what's the movie? It's called
I can't remember. It's on my,
Hidden Figures is the movie.
yes,
Because
yes.
they were they were in behind the scenes, doing all that. So this movie is actually about my grandmother's. Like she was one of these ladies,
Okay.
and that's what like and her niece is my cousin Shirley. She is she was the first black woman to be a mayor of a major city in the United States. So she was a mayor of Atlanta from 2000 2008, and that's my grandmother's niece.
Okay. So
And
she learned from your grandmother's.
my mother's side. It's my mother's first cousin. She said at my grandmother's funeral that one of her inspirations, and she had like she had a speech, and she kind of brought it up. She goes, as like a young black woman, I looked up to Mildred, my grandmother, because she was, and she said she quoted the movie, Hidden Figures, and said she was one of these women that were working hard, that knew numbers, that were working for the government, that they were, it was the highest level that you could get as like a minority woman, black woman at that time, in 40s. And she's like, well, and that she saw this, and then my grandmother went on to like she worked for the Pentagon for like 25 or 30 years, retired, um, and then became like a real estate agent, was a top real estate agent. But it was just because of those opportunities that she got working for the military, and and having good values, like sticking to it, like that's what you do. Like, and I think like her mother never, like they worked a little bit, but then when she got to certain, she took care of, but they were living in DC, and DC was a very good place for black people to grow up because it was not in the South, so they didn't have to deal with that issue,
Mm.
So you think about, and at that point, like slavery was only over for 50, 60 years, and like Jim Crow laws were still going around, like.
In the southern states, you mean?
Yeah, they were born in like Asheville, North Carolina, like in the western North Carolina, but they moved to DC, and that's where like they were in Jim Crow laws, so the opportunities were a lot better. So that's what I'm saying. So based off of race and class, it depends where you can go. So I don't know. I think it's hard to separate them sometimes. Does that make
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't know, obviously, what other elements were expressed within the interview and what was written down. I do believe strongly, however, that I think there is institutionalized racism in the UK as well as in the US, and it is a huge problem and has to be dealt with. I'm not convinced that the politicians have either the will nor indeed the ability to eradicate it. I don't think they know how, and I'm not sure they want to either.
That's how they stay in. Some of the guys stay in power that way,
Hmm.
you know. And that was the huge swing in the election, was the system that they created to keep black people from voting and staying in power. They got beat by it.
Yeah, but I mean, how much of that, corrupt system will they be able to change when they don't control both houses? I think it's difficult, isn't it, to be able to change
Yeah.
the
Look,
voting laws?
even like if you look at the last like stimulus thing they're going through, it's like they're so focused on their like the outer put like lobbyists and stuff of what they're representing, that they like won't even they're like they won't even give people money to survive. Like they're fighting over like their politics before the people's lives and livelihood.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
crazy. And
Yeah,
they're like, and they're like, well, no, and it's like, oh, we're gonna give them 600 a month. Like when the average rent or mortgage in the U.S. is 1,000. Like most people came in, like, what is the $600 gonna do? But I heard it got up to 2,000.
yeah. I mean, we are talking about unrealistic solutions and indeed unrealistic estimates for what people require to be able to live on. That there are sort of statistics out there which tell us, that realistically this is what you need to survive in this city or in this area, and governments simply are not in a position to provide that. And it's also reflected in the UK and in other countries too. So there is a need for creative economic policies. I'm not sure that the powers that are out there are willing to entertain that creativity. I don't think it's there. We're going to suffer a lot as a result of this virus, this pandemic.
Yeah, for years. But they're not really seeing, because like think all the people that lost their job every day, they're losing jobs. They're not working, and they're not creating more jobs. Companies are getting smaller and smaller because and now that they're not even going to have like office buildings, people are going to, they're like, companies like, why rent an office building now?
Mm.
Then you're losing janitors, you're losing security, you're using the people that take care of it. Then the landlords are losing money because they don't have the companies to rent the places anymore. So then they start pulling money from other places, and that taxes the people at the bullet, the BVGA is like raising their prices now
Yeah.
because there's less people riding the trains, so they need to make more money to pay all their employees and take care of all the trains. And then the people are going to be like those people who are getting hurt, the people who have to put up the 50 euros a month out of their 400 euro paycheck. So a quarter of their paycheck, not a quarter, but whatever.
Yeah.
I'm not the best at math, but
That's all right.
they're. I mean, that's a lot of money like you're putting up just to get to work.
Yeah, I mean, okay, we've jumped around a little bit with our topics, but I think we're talking about essentially, in many cases, 2020 fallout. And this is essentially what we've seen apparently happen around us. But also, I mean, you're obviously quite concerned about news in the US. I also follow news in the UK. So these are unfortunate.
Oh, dude, I've been following a lot of UK news recently, and it's just I don't know,
Yeah,
a little
I
different
mean,
than the US political
yeah,
scene.
it is a little bit different. I mean, we can also throw in, Brexit, but I think there are other topics which, I mean, Brexit. That's so 2016.
What,
Um, you know.
question, Zach?
Hmm?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, please, man.
So, so I've had a couple arguments in the past couple months and for years about like this whole issue with like immigrants. And recently there was a shooting in Kreuzberg, and
Mm.
I jumped in the canal to avoid getting shot. I think 4 people got shot in total, and maybe one died. I think. Um, but I'm on all these like expat groups on Facebook and on Twitter, and they start going off, like this is Merkel's land, it's like they let in all these immigrants, blah blah blah, and then you see like people from all over the world commenting, and it's great content to hear like a Mexican try to explain why like this is happening in Germany when it's like it's I was
Mm.
reading these comments, and I just want to know your thoughts about uh, some of the key terms they're using are like integrate into the society, and it's like what do you expect, because like my thing is like I guess I'll let you answer, but
No, no, please go for
there's
it.
religion and then there's the culture of the country that they're coming to, either it's Sweden, Germany, England, US, and there's all these issues, this total issues with this. So like, a lot of people were coming out like this is because of all the refugees and the immigrants don't want to integrate into our society. And this is what happens. This is what you're dealing with. And I had a Swedish guy say, there's 365 murders a year in Sweden, and it's all because of the Afghanistans they let come in to and stay in Stockholm, and they don't want to integrate, and they're selling drugs and they're creating crime. And I'm like, 365 murders a year in a whole country, maybe it's
Mm.
just Stockholm. And it's like, people will get murdered every day in the United States.
Yeah.
And
Obviously, different realities, but
they blame guns, but they're blaming these immigrants. So I just want to hear what your thoughts on that. Especially because, you come from immigrants to
yeah,
the
yeah,
country,
yeah, yeah, definitely.
created
And
out of country, so I'm just trying to figure out.
yeah, well, I mean, I was born in London, but my parents were immigrants, and then I left the UK and went to live in Italy. So I was an immigrant myself in Italy, and then I came to Berlin in 2012. So I was a second time an immigrant in another culture. And yeah, I've got a lot of thoughts on this. I think as is with every relationship, it goes two ways. Yeah. So if you're an immigrant, then you have to have this will to integrate, to experience the culture into which you are moving. But at the same time, the culture to which you have now, sort of embraced your future, perhaps, that should also be welcoming. And in many cases, I've noticed in Germany it is, but it's not always. It really depends on where you go, how open-minded society is, how multicultural it is. And I think Berlin, we're quite lucky from that perspective, though I have been told repeatedly by people that I've worked with who are, of black ethnic origin, they've said, yeah, some parts of Berlin it's probably best to stay away from. But generally speaking, Berlin is very welcoming, and I haven't experienced any racism personally on that score. Um, the only thing I will say with regards to this issue is something that my wife has on a sticker on her diary, and it's no human is illegal. I think we all walk this planet with natural rights, and I think we're all equal within those natural rights. Whether we arrived before or after, I think it's simply a question of timing, and it's not a question of superiority, inferiority, being better or worse. It's just timing.
Yeah.
And I don't think people should be punished, discriminated against because of timing, even if that timing is hundreds of years or thousands of years. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, but well, I'm really mainly like about the crime. Like my opinion is like there's bad people who are going to be quit committing crimes everywhere that you can't just really base it off because they're immigrants. But
Oh, clearly.
and that's the issue. I think maybe it's just easier for people just to blame them. But then there's a whole obsession with white people
Mm,
with this. Like some of them don't care. They're like super open minded about it. And
mm.
I mean, because I've been able to talk to people from different countries who have totally different views about it. You know what I mean? So it goes on from culture to culture, and yeah,
Well, when you say white people, tell me what you mean. Because yesterday, with this little challenge that you set for me, was really eye-opening for me. Because when you asked me about these five midfielders, and then I only gave you, English players who were white, and you know that I'm not racist at all. So, but that really led me to sort of question, my thought processes. So why did I choose those? And I still haven't exactly come to, a complete conclusion as to why that is the case. But I mean, when you say white people find it very difficult to deal with this crime element, what do you mean? What are some of the things that they've said to you?
no, it's just when I say white people, I'm saying like I'm using it in a way like this kind of like the majority, like how the system is set up, like the white privilege, and
Okay.
that's more the way I was saying, like the white privilege,
Mm. Okay.
because I don't I just think naturally unconsciously you probably you're just drawn to those players maybe because you're able to relate more to those guys. And just how like when I watch sports or like a young black girl watches sports, she is going to like try to relate to the girls that look like her, like
Yeah.
Serena Williams. You
Or
know
any Oloku, for example. Oluko. Yeah.
who?
She used to play football for England. She was of yeah, a black English football player, very good actually.
And I guarantee if you look at the amount of players who's decided to start playing football as black girls in England, they probably increased by 100% because they were able to relate to her and say,
Mm.
oh, I want to play football like her.
I hope so. I really do. I think
It really
it's
does have, I mean, you just don't realize, but that is a huge effect. So I think when you just pick players, you always look at like, all right, why is this guy? Why do I like this guy? Because, like I can relate to him. He reminds me of myself. Like oh, that could be me, or he plays the way
mm,
I like to play.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, if I had actually opened my mind a little bit more than I had, I would have also picked Vieira. But as I said, Vieira played for a very good Arsenal team, which I hated at the time, and that's probably why he didn't come to my mind immediately. But if we're talking about midfield greats from the Premier League era, then I think Vieira would have to rate highly. Um, but okay, yeah. This other thing about violence, I think it's very interesting. I think it's very, very easy for indigenous white people to point to immigrants as the reason for crime increasing in certain fields. I remember recently I read in an article that was talking about these child abuse circles or abuse circles, where they've sort of created communities which abuse children and women and so on. And there is this belief in the UK that these are all led by a majority of men from certain Asian countries. But the statistics show that the vast majority are Brits. There may be perhaps a certain ratio of participation which are from Asian background, but that should in no way take away from the fact that the vast majority are Brits, ethnic Brits.
Yeah.
So it's very, very easy to point a finger at somebody who comes from a different country, is of a different color, different belief structure. Um, but we should by no means try to wash, away our own responsibilities. Trying to catch people who are not from immigrant backgrounds, and I think it's very, very, very unfair. The way that it's because it's just so easy. So a lot of the times these people don't have a voice, do they? They're
No.
not. They can't defend themselves. How do they do that?
Yeah, and then one person does something and they glorify it on the news, and then everybody's terrified.
Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. And then you look at, people on the, public transportation, and you say, oh, okay, is that somebody who's going to do this, or is somebody who's going to do that? Um, I do remember once seeing this Facebook post from, it was an Arab lady, I think she posted it. I could be wrong. But when we talk about clothing and, what sort of ethnic clothing you look at, um, people who wear suits, usually men, have been responsible for the deaths of more people than any other ethnic clothing, should we say, or ethnically clothed dress sense. So, we should, if we're going to look at people on public transport who could be dangerous, look at men in suits.
Yeah, especially politicians.
Yeah, not that they take public transport very often, but anyway, well, okay. All right, if we're gonna let's yeah, because there are going to be certain elements of this first initial introductory podcast where it's going to be, I've sort of thrown together our previous conversation as well. So it's going to seem a little bit disjointed, but that was when we talked about advertising. And you mentioned some of the things that you experienced when you were over there in the States earlier this year. So I'll add that in maybe about now. Recording. Okay, so it's recording now. So yeah, this is basically, I wouldn't say live, but this is recording just so that I can then add it to some of the other stuff that I've done, and then we can see how it follows on. Because I don't have any professional editing software here. It's just what is it called? Audacity. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's what I'll be using. Um, yeah, and what else, man? Have you got some other topics? I mean, you said that you were happy with the list that I had, but I mean, some of those items are pretty big and it lacks detail. So, I mean, for example,
I just rather speak about like just current events,
yeah,
music, sports,
okay,
maybe and
all
then
right,
some history.
yeah. I mean, there's a lot of diversity though, yeah. So, okay, obviously US sports, and I mean, we don't. Okay, we throw eggs around, but we call that egg sport like rugby, and you call it American football. Um, and these are two completely different sports. So I wouldn't have
Yeah,
a clue what to say, but I mean, I'm more than happy for you to explain it
but
to me.
but
I'd love to hear about what it means.
what American football?
Yeah. I
Oh,
mean,
of
nobody
course.
understands what, I mean,
But I
no
mean, I think
Brit
it also
understands.
would be cool to be like, oh, what when I say that, what comes to your mind first, and then you could go off of that, and then I
Yeah.
could go off of that, and then explain it more. But this, when you hear about it, what you think, you like, top of your head, what do you think about this, or what comes to mind when you hear this, and then you could even elaborate like what comes off the top of your head
Mm,
into how is that just like a stereotypical of either the culture or the people that play the sport,
mm.
that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, when I think of American football, there's a list of, okay, obviously Super Bowl, because it's like the main product, as it were. And then after that, it's a commercial every 20 seconds. Yeah. Janet Jackson's nipple falling out at halftime. I think that springs to mind. Yeah, it's just like a big show, isn't it? Is it more a sporting event or a big show? I'm never
I
really
mean, I
sure.
think it's a sporting event, but it's also like a capitalist event where
Mm,
people look to capitalize off everybody or whatever 60 million people or 30 million people tuning in for 4 hours in big groups. So like you're able to sell like alcohol, lots of alcohol is being sold, lots of food is being sold. Um, what else? Alcohol, food, music, uh, just normal advertising, just selling like home goods and hotels and traveling and Nike and all these things are
mm,
able to just they have this like 4 hour window where they can just capture this millions of people and make an impact. Because you think about some of these commercials have come out in past years, like they have influenced advertising around the world just by this one commercial and how they approached it, and then like the Budweiser frogs. You remember that commercial?
absolutely. Yeah. What's
Yeah,
up?
and think
Yeah.
about that, like that was shown that type of like advertising changed. Where like you trying to click into someone's head, and like this funny type of advertising where they like it's easy to do, and you have everybody doing it who don't even drink the beer.
Mm,
Kids are doing it, so
yeah.
it becomes like part of pop culture.
Mm.
This type of like, this event. It's only one night a year.
And that's different for American sports, isn't it? Because okay, NBA, you've got like a best of seven. You know.
Yes, that's why the NBA it's like the finals last 2 weeks, but it's also 2 weeks of opportunity to sell stuff, because people are
Mm,
tuned in. But I think the Super Bowl is like it's just such a. I mean, people pay like 2 or 3 million just for 30 seconds, you know, and like for
advert.
a full minute commercial, it could be like $10 million.
And they make their money back, do they, on that investment?
Oh yeah, I mean they look at sales and the commercials like of what you're selling like it goes up tremendously
Mm,
just by like catching people's eye, especially if you have two products like Pepsi and Coca-Cola,
mm,
and then Pepsi has a huge hit with an ad on that night, and then their sales shift because people are like, oh, Pepsi's cooler.
mm.
People are so easily influenced by this shit.
Yeah, I mean that leads us to all sorts of different topics of conversation about 2020 and the post-truth and so on. I mean, yeah, yeah, being easily convinced and swayed is has as a public has really influenced or allowed the influence of certain politicians in the USA. Do you think there's advertising has to take a step back a bit, or do you think it's just free society? That's how it is.
Um, I don't know. I think people have the right to spend their money and on what they want, especially with
Mm,
advertising and selling their business. I think maybe the targeting, but now you have like all these platforms to advertise, and it's really crazy, like the ways that these consumers can be reached now.
mm.
And like I know I put this block on like my phone, and like I just every time like they want to know where I'm located, like constantly, and it's like just so they can know I'm in that area to sell something.
Mm.
Restaurants, full
Well,
control.
okay. I mean, at the moment, I guess that particular package isn't working very well because a lot of places are closed. But yeah, generally, there
Yeah.
was this thing, though, isn't it? Where when you go into a mall, it's like a message sort of pops up and says, "Oh, we've got a special offer on in this, in this particular shop." So, I mean, but that's a part of the package of going to the shops, isn't it?
Well, I think shops are going to be non-existent soon because like these huge mall spaces are really a waste of money, and because people aren't going to the malls, especially
Mm,
with the certain situations with like Nike and like Gap and L Bean hit record sales for online delivery in the last
mm,
week. And the
mm,
UPS said that they would only accept so many packages from these companies because they have to deliver the other private like citizens packages as well because they're so overwhelmed with Nike and Gap they can't
mm,
even sell it. And then like it's just so much easier. Now you can go on like Amazon and buy from small merchants and even be able to pick up in their stores
mm.
or go to like a pickup station, so you can actually see where you're buying it from. And to why even have these malls that people pay like 2 or 3 thousand or 5,000 for a rental space,
Mm.
and they're not even selling. Um, Most of their goods are 90% of their stuff is being sold online.
Yeah, but I mean, things go around in circles, don't they? As in, if you remember in like the IT sort of boom where they took their services offshore, and they automated it, and then people said, no, 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 I want to speak to a human being, and I want to speak to a human being, in this country who understands the shit I'm going through. And yeah, it just went around. So after 10 years, it left your country, turned into a computer, which was housed somewhere else. And then after that, it went to a call center in some other part of the world, and then it came back. Because customers just didn't want to deal with that shit, and I think with shopping it's going to be the same thing. So, there is no substitute for the social interaction, but also speaking to a retail assistant who actually has an idea of the products on offer. You don't get that necessarily on Amazon. You don't get somebody saying to you,
No,
try this, try that.
but yeah, but there's both sides to that because like just recently I was in New York and I was looking for a jacket, and the first guy who asked me if I needed help, I was like, yeah, I'm looking for this type of jacket, blah blah blah, and he was like, yeah, you got this one, and then there's this one, and let me know if you have any more questions. And I'm like, all right. I guess he looked at me and was like, oh, this guy's not going to buy anything or something. He just thought it wasn't important to have to show his full attention. And this other guy comes over, black guy actually, and then he's like, "Hey, like, what can I help you with?" I said, told him the same thing, and he pulls out 3 jackets. He's like, "These are the ones that you should look for. This is you live in the city, but you're looking for something. Maybe if you had to travel or go to like the mountains, that it would protect you and bad weather, but also breathable and it's functional. Blah blah blah." And he showed me like 3 jackets. I tried them on, and I ended up getting one. And the other guy was sitting there with his mouth, like his jaw dropped because he was like, he just missed that sale. I was like,
Racial
but look at
racial profiling was it?
I don't know about that, but also it's like certain items you can't just go buy online. Like like buying a TV offline is like not the best idea 'cause you need to see what it looks like, how the picture is. Like you can read all the reviews you want. Buying like a winter coat. offline. Like, you don't know if it's how it fits. Yeah, but like buying like shoes, your shoes always you're always gonna wear that size. You know the model, you've seen it before on someone else. You know to get it. T-shirts as well, but there's some certain items you just can't. So, but why do you have like a mall with 30 different department stores and half of them people are buying the stuff offline? Like when I was on like Fifth Avenue, you see like these huge, like they had like a Dyson vacuum cleaner store
Mm.
on Fifth Avenue, and I'm like, how much does Dyson pay
Mm.
just for to have this advertising on? I mean, the rentals. I mean, the rent of a retail store on Fifth Avenue has to be like 100,000, 150,000 a month.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, dude, it's the most biggest street in New York for you know uh tourists, and like it's this huge like advertisement to have like one of your stores like on that avenue, like,
Mm.
and then you have like three more stores in Soho, like South.
Okay. I didn't
So
realize
like why do
Dyson was.
and even like I was talking to my friend earlier today, he was like saying like the same stores have places like in Berlin, like on like Kudam, and it's like people aren't there
Mm.
buying enough stuff to pay the rent for that store, but they just want to have that space. This is like be like, look, we're here. This is where we were set
Mm.
up. In each city we have, but who's they're not making the money out of the store front.
No, but I mean, yeah, but these are huge companies. I guess Dyson is a huge company as well. It's just you.
Dyson is it, and
Yeah.
their vacuum cleaners are like $400.
Well, more
They're
than
really
that, I
nice
guess.
vacuum, more they're
Mm.
really nice vacuum cleaners, but
Mm.
I was just so shocked to see them like we need to have a spot on Fifth Avenue to show that we're the elitists in the vacuum cleaner business.
Mm. Yeah.
Really.
All right.
But also like I've been doing research on how like gastronomy. I saw this article on there's this Japanese company called Kura Sushi, and they have like taken over the sushi market in like Japan, and now they've moved on to like the U.S. and their goal is to open up 1,000 of these sushi restaurants by 2030, so the next 10 years. And the whole place is contactless, and it's like you go up to like a tablet, you make your order. Each sushi roll is $1 or €1 per roll.
Mm.
Then you can pick whatever you want inside the sushi, what allergies you have, what type of rice you want. It's made by a robot, makes it and cuts it, and then you sit down. They give you a table number, and then it comes on a conveyor belt to your table, and you just take it off, and that's it. You're done. You leave it, and then you put it back on the conveyor belt, and it takes it away. And then
Okay. Yeah.
there's like a sanitizer
Mm.
spray that comes out on the table and wipes the table down by robot, and that's ready for the next person.
Right. And the payment is what? Just
And
through your
you pay
phone
when you
or?
come in, you pay on your
Okay.
tablet, like but touch free, like through your
Mm.
card or Apple Pay.
Mm.
And so like because of the virus and also how people don't have time to sit down, and it's like so all the old like sushi chefs have been like eliminated and then going out of business because people just like why go sit down and watch this guy like make this work of art, which is like super cool,
Mm.
but when I can just pay half the price, half the time, and be done with it
Mm.
and go back to work, because that's how the world is just becoming, like it's just work, work, work.
Mm.
And
So
then so they're trying to open up, a couple hundred restaurants in the US and try to like and they'll probably and other companies will probably go in with them and chain and do like burger models and sandwich models and soup models, like this. So then you're eliminating all those types of jobs by robots.
have you ever seen the movie Chitty Chitty Bang Bang? This musical from the '60s, I think.
Yes,
I can't remember
long
if it's
time
with
ago.
Dick Van Dyke, but he was
Yeah,
yeah, he was he used to be an inventor, and he built this crazy machine that made breakfast for his family. Do you remember that?
yeah, I remember that. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's in like in
yeah,
the treehouse.
yeah. The mill or whatever that he turned into
Yeah.
his home. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's just yeah, it's only taken 70 years, but yeah, it seems as though they've actually managed to do it for sushi as opposed to an English breakfast.
Yeah, and they're also like now supposedly like the next thing for Amazon is to do security, do like police force, so like they'll just have robots or cameras that just patrol
Robocop.
like yeah, like it's literally RoboCop like that can these cameras that can look up and down, they can zoom in, they can record any
Mm,
action. You put one like on each street corner, and then you don't have the issue of them beating up people and excessive force, and you don't have to have people hire people to monitor each neighborhood. And
okay.
then Google's like, oh, we'll just run it and we'll build it, and then cities will just buy our platform, and they'll buy our services
Uh,
to police and stuff.
okay. Is this something that's been discussed, or are you making this shit up
Yeah,
now?
yeah, this is real. This is real.
Okay.
I
This is
saw the
like,
five G towers going up in Atlanta everywhere, and they're right next to like all these people's houses. They're saying, "Oh, it's radiation," but like think about all the people that have freaking microwaves in their house in the whole building, and everybody's using a microwave every night. What's the difference in that radiation? But they don't know the total. But
and who's doing the 5G? What is it? What is it? AT&T or is it some?
AT&T, yeah, AT&T, I think is doing it.
Okay.
Or
And the
T-Mobile,
technology is from where? Because I
China,
mean, it's but they
China.
yeah, but they were like, no, no, you can't use Huawei because it's Chinese and we can't trust that. And so what? They're buying what, white box Chinese goods or what?
Exactly.
And they stick an AT&T sticker on it and that's it.
Yeah, it's yeah. It's just the whole thing, like the U.S. actually their huge enemy is China, but like you think about all the products that are made in China that are sold in the U.S. at Walmarts and Kmart's and malls that are cheap products, and then they're consistently reselling them to the U.S. because people are buying it. Oh, it's cheap, it's affordable, and they're just rebuying and rebuying, and it's just a total supply chain from China because they're just
Mm,
selling you shit products that only last 2 months. You have to buy a new broom, you have to buy a new this every month
mm.
instead of just spending the extra money on a nice product that's made local or made by a better system that will
But
last you longer. But people don't want to do that.
okay, but the
They
5G
don't they don't, they
masts, I
don't think
mean,
about they don't think about like if I buy this thing 10 times or if I buy a nice one once and it lasts me for 10 years, what's the difference? Like people don't see the down the road, like the wealth, the worth of it. They only see how much money they're spending on it right now.
mm. But yeah, but 5G masts, I mean, that's not going to be something you're going to rebuild in 2 months' time. I mean, this has got to be some proper stuff that is coming in. It's got to be quality tested. It's got to be go through a certain sort of standard assessment. You can't just stick up a multi-billion-dollar infrastructure and then change it after a couple of
Oh,
years.
dude, no, they did. It's ready to go. There's no joke.
Mm,
I even saw this. They have these card things where you can like go online. You can pull your credit score, get a loan, put a down payment, get your address and all this shit, and then you buy the car online, and then it comes down like a conveyor belt at these centers. They're just off the highway, and your car comes out and it's ready for you to drive. I'll give it. I'll show you. I have a picture of it.
mm. And what, it's like spontaneous or what? It's
No, it's like if you don't need to go to a car dealership anymore to buy a car.
okay.
You don't believe
Uh,
me?
no, 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 I do. Is it? This is
I'll
something
tell you what it's
like,
called.
yeah.
I'm looking at. Hold on, I'm just going back into my. It's called like the Cube or something.
Uh-huh.
Right here,
Uh,
it's called Carvana. You
okay.
should look it up.
And how long does it take? As in, you walk in there with your credit card and then what?
No, you do it from home. You do it from
Oh,
home. I'm sending you a picture of it.
okay.
So you do it from home. You give it. You get your credit score. You apply for your credit score. If you have a down payment, you hook up your bank account and you send
Mm,
it over. And then you purchase it, and it says like, oh, go to this location off Buford Highway 2211, and
mm.
your car comes down a conveyor belt and comes out, and it has the keys and everything. It's ready for you to go. And
Bloody
you put
hell.
in like you can apply for your tags and everything.
Mm. That's crazy shit. But okay, but these are pre-configured cars, and they're
Yeah,
they're
they
just
have different
matched.
miles. Look at your. I sent it to you on
Yeah,
WhatsApp.
yeah, I saw the picture. Yeah,
It's just like a giant tower of cars in
yeah,
the middle of the
yeah.
highway.
It's crazy shit. All right. Yeah, I mean, but all of these things. Okay, I mean, I'm gonna have to run off soon, but all of these things, basically, you're cutting out, the human participation element in the
Yeah,
sales process. Yeah, so um, we are essentially substituting chefs or car dealers or whatever else for
it's car
um,
salesman. Yeah,
yeah, uh, but we're substituting them with basically IT maintenance people. So they no longer have to provide a quality service with regards to the goods. They need to make sure that the ability for the company to continue producing those goods is up and running, and that's it. So it was a good way to introduce that. But if you were to give your thoughts, your final thoughts on 2020, and then next time when we meet for a chat, we'll talk about your expectations going forward for 2021. So we can't wait too long, Chris. Yeah, maybe next week or the week after.
no, it's fine.
Yeah, yeah, okay. But 2020, go on. What do you think?
Oh, man, I learned a lot this year. Um, I don't know. I have like mixed feelings. Like I think any year, no matter how bad it looks, there's definitely positives you can take out of it. And for me, I learned a lot about the world this year, and yeah, I mean, yeah, I got to think about it for a second, but it's just like it was just such a whirlwind when it started, and like I had such, I was so organized in January and February, and I was like, I celebrated a birthday, and I was like, okay, like I'm ready for the spring and stay on top of stuff, and just when March hit, and it just took everything away, I just was like, I was like, oh, this is a couple weeks, we'll be back, and then I slowly saw people losing their jobs, and you start seeing like restaurants closing, and it's just like super like sad to see this like happen to people. But then you see the kind of the way people started to come together and sit around together and like talk and be more understanding, and um, it just like leveled the playing field for a lot of people. That was good to see, and this the camaraderie that other people were having with each other. I was really happy. And then I just for I had a visa issue and traveling issue, and I was kind of stuck with that plus the virus. So I haven't been in one place for that long, like a one city, or and I was like, wow, like this is it's it really changes your mental view on the world because you're just so stuck in like one area. And I was always able just to like travel and go to different places, and it was kind of like who I was, like my character as a person, and like one of my hobbies. And I like it's like one of my passions in life is traveling and experiencing new cultures. And when I like couldn't do that anymore, I just was like I was like getting like super frustrated, and I was getting frustrated at food. I was getting frustrated at what I was drinking. I would get frustrated at work, with my friends, and I was just like the conversations I was having. I stopped talking to people because I just knew what was going to happen when we hung out. Like we're going to do the same thing, and like I just cut out a lot of like nonsense and stuff that really frustrated me with some of my friends and people in my life, which was very like different too.
Mhm.
And I felt bad at first, but I was like, look, like, I just don't get any enjoyment of hanging out with these people. Like the conversations aren't there, and when I talk about something, they don't listen. And I just like they act like it was just really like a fake plastic type on the surface, but you kind of just realize you need like some kind of substance with your friends. It has to be more than just like drinking beers and hanging out for a couple hours, and like I don't know, I just need more out of it. So I definitely realized that too. And also people that bring like a certain type of mental stimulation to me. I always thought that was important. And if like I just don't feel that, and I don't feel like I get that out of that, why waste your time just because like you were in a situation with those people,
Yeah.
and you feel guilt. But I don't know. I think maybe life's too short just to string stuff along, and because they enjoy like your company, and I don't know. I'm still trying to figure that out, but
Mm.
I just had to take a break from a lot of my groups of friends and just kind of focus on like
Good.
the good parts of it.
Yeah. And we are referring to the good parts. How much do you miss basketball, man?
Yeah, like that stuff. Like I had friends that were disrupting like just basketball. Like, why are you gonna go play basketball? I'm like, dude, like, why are you like who are you asking me? You know what I mean? Like, screw basketball. Let's go get some beer. Like, no, it's like like you should find a hobby too besides going to drink
Mm.
beer, like this is and I miss the camaraderie there. I miss going out and like competing and talking and getting upset about because I missed
Yeah.
myself and like that kind of like disappointment over like playing a sport that means nothing really is like something you just can't get naturally, like just talking to people every day. You need that kind of competitiveness to bring out like that extra in you.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree. I tell you, I'm kind of not quite dying because I'm doing also as many, sort of physical activities as I can, but they're all on my own. I'm not an individual sports person. I could never do running or swimming.
No.
I can't swim, and my ability to run is dominated by, the pursuit of a spherical object. So right now, going out to run is extremely difficult. So I completely agree. I need a team. I need people to push me. Playing basketball with you and the other guys, especially as all of you are better than me, it pushes me. I need that to
Yeah, it's
push me
good.
on, and it's
Good. And
oh,
I think a lot of people don't have that in their life.
mm,
Like they don't really, well, they never had it when they were kids, and then or they did, they enjoyed it, but then when they get to like, especially in the U.S., like wow, like
hmm,
once people hit a certain age, there's just not a lot of organized sports for people anymore. It's because everybody's working so much, and if there are, they're very hard to get into.
mm,
And then people their work schedule and their life schedule just doesn't abide by it. And then like we always played like pickup games like once a week. Everybody gets to gym, but it's never like organized how we have it with this. Like practice, like they take it serious. There's a group chat like about the games. Like when I played before, it was just like, all right, guys, show up. Hopefully we get six. Hopefully we get seven players.
yeah,
Like this is like, man, like, I hope I get to play today.
mm,
15 guys. That always frustrated me because it's like I'm there every day, and then some guy who hasn't been there in weeks comes and
yeah, I
he's
know.
running around. I'm just like, come on, and like the flow, like it hurts the flow of the game.
Mm.
You think like when you play with the same guys, like their movements, and then you like throw in Hans, who hasn't been there in 6 months, and he's shooting and he's acting like he's been playing every day. It's like no wonder we lost by 40.
Yeah. Luckily, we don't have anyone called Hans on the team. So, but yes, indeed.
Yeah,
Um, Definitely looking forward to basketball coming back. That's for sure. And hopefully, yeah, that will be quite quickly. I have my doubts though. I think, Chris, we're looking at maybe April by the time or before we start playing basketball again. But that's just my view.
but I don't know, man. The virus is like the thing that I was because since I had this, I've been tested like maybe 6 times total. The thing
Okay.
that really got me is like I got tested 4 times in the last 2 weeks, and it was positive every time. And you think about the numbers of how many people like so people who already know they have it are probably getting tested all the time because they're trying to get negative so they can go do stuff.
Mm.
So if you think about how messed up the numbers are. So I'm skeptical about a lot of stuff. Like I understand there's a virus. I do believe in that. I understand
Yeah.
it's very dangerous, but the system of monitoring it that the whole world has decided to go by, I just don't understand. Because like as soon as you get it, you should go right into a database There should be like an app or something with your city or your country, and then they monitor how many days of your symptoms. And then they should monitor the amount in your bloodstream and have to know like, okay, this person's no longer contagious. Because like I keep getting tested. They say now you can go out after 10 days. I got tested after 13 days, and I was still positive.
Shit.
So am I still contagious or what? So like, and then no one, and then I'm supposed to get a phone call by the health department. No one called.
Mm.
You know, it's
So your last test was positive, was it? You haven't yet had a
yesterday I got
negative.
a positive test.
Yesterday.
Yesterday.
Shit. So okay. So what's the drill then? You're gonna wait another few days and take another test?
But then they say that you could be positive for 3 months.
What?
Yeah. They said, I mean, they said 30 to 40% of people can be positive for 3 weeks after a positive test, or 3 weeks after they quarantine. They can still. They've had people who there was a family. I want to say in the U.S. or Germany. I don't know, but maybe UK. I think it was when it first happened, and she just had a baby. She tested positive. Baby was like a couple weeks old. I don't know, and she didn't see her child for 55 days because she kept testing positive for 55 days.
Bah.
That's a month and a half. She was testing positive, and that she couldn't see her newborn.
Mm.
And so that's like, how do you know? Like, how can you go back about with your life? They're just like, it's like you get sick, you have it, you do everything they tell you, because they shut everything down. You wear your mask, you try to social distance, and then you get it, and then you're sick, and then after you did your 14 days, you're still coming up positive. Can you go to work? Can you not go to work? Is it dangerous if you go to work? Like, can you be around people? Like, there's no way to tell.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess the rule of thumb is if you're still testing positive, then I guess you got to maintain the isolation. But
But, for
some information would be nice, wouldn't it?
but also, like, so they have the PCR test and they have this other antigen test, and like the PCR, they both like do the swab. Have you had one yet?
No, I haven't had any. No,
Uh,
because I've not had symptoms really this year. So,
yeah, and most people that have asymptomatic or don't have symptoms, they pass it on, and I think they get rid of it faster because it's not as much in the bloodstream. So like when they
mm,
check DNA for it, they can see how many like protein particles are in there, and the PCR test for around like 30 particles or more or something before it comes up. So if you have under 30 particles in that DNA sample, you have the virus, but they don't register it as enough. And then but you can go out and still spread it, but they say you're negative.
okay. So, yeah, for these reasons, I'm happy not to be a doctor or a scientist because I can't understand that. And I mean, I would not imagine being able to take responsibility for saying to somebody, "You're okay, go out," and that person then goes and spreads it and says, "But my doctor said it was all right." I'm happy I don't have that responsibility. But I will repeat the one thing that, this virus is still relatively new for humanity, and it's going to take a long time until we completely understand, the different factors involved within it. Plus, it's going to change a lot, isn't it, over the next, few years? So, this is like a constant challenge to be able to stay 1 foot ahead.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, a lot of people keep saying like, oh, next June everything will be back to normal. Like, there's no way.
no, no,
There's,
I can't
there's
see that
like how
happening.
many billion? 6 billion people on the planet, or more? I don't know, 7 billion,
Yeah, I think 7 billion, but yeah.
and 18 million have been infected.
That's a
No,
long way to go, isn't it?
no, 18 million Americans have been affected.
Oh, okay. And
300,000 dead.
330,000, I think, more or less. It's crazy, crazy figures, man. Crazy figures.
I want to know how many people died of heart attacks this year in the U.S.
Do you mean related to COVID or just normally?
Oh,
As a,
just like just
okay.
heart disease from being obese.
Hmm.
That's the number one like killer in the United States. Obesity.
Obesity.
That affects people from obesity.
Hmm.
because of diabetes, um, cardiovascular disease like heart attacks
Yeah.
are the biggest killers.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to the States a few times, and one of the things that always remains impressed within my mind is the quantity of food you get when you make an order.
Oh,
You know,
it,
I,
great!
it's crazy, man.
It's such a great thing to get those plates, but then you see what's doing to people, and it's like, man. I mean, for me, like I love food, and when I'm here in Berlin, and when I go there, the amount that I consume and the way that it affects my body is crazy because
Mm.
it's like you just it just triggers these things in your brain like whoa like oh my god like like I haven't seen this
Yeah.
place in so long and like and you're like I need to get everything because like
Mm.
I don't know where I'm gonna get it again and you're like oh and then you just start checking off. I mean I was going out at 6 a.m. to the Waffle House to get Waffle House
Oh,
because I wanted the potatoes covered smothered diced pepped and it was
God.
just amazing. It's like $6 for this plate of just cheese and potatoes and ham and bacon. And,
Mate, you got to be careful, man. Otherwise, you're going to turn into Uncle Phil. I mean, I don't know. Was that his name, Uncle Phil from Fresh Prince? Uh,
rest in peace. He died a couple years ago.
yeah. Shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't keep up with all of these people that I shared a life with on the silver screen, and then they pass away. Yeah.
There's like lights going on tonight.
No.
Um, yeah, but I just the way that they food advertise and the size of stuff is crazy, man.
Yeah. No, it's way too much, and then I remember I've got a few experiences, silly little stories about eating in the US, but yeah, okay, this is something I think we've got so many of these topics that we have to talk about and sort of dedicate shows to. Maybe we can pick this as one of the options for our upcoming series. All right then, Chris, thank you for your time again. I know it's been difficult for you recently.
Yeah, man, you get me on
Um,
the roll now. I can talk all night.
yeah, well, I have to find an opportunity so that I can talk with you for hours and hours as well, mate. Because I mean, for me, it's essentially it's catching up with a friend I haven't seen anywhere near enough this year. So,
No,
um, yeah. All right, I'll
I think we
try
need to
to
stick
find.
to maybe just one or two solid topics. I get too distracted. I just get going and I roll off subject too fast. So maybe the next show we'll just do like one topic.
Yeah, but also
Yeah.
I mean,
It's gonna go,
I would.
but I just want to keep the theme like similar
Okay.
because we
Well,
went from sports to COVID to
mm.
race class back to COVID.
Yeah, I mean, but we will. I'm comfortable in that because I'm sure we will revisit race, we will revisit class, because I think these are topics of our era. Black Lives Matter I think it's huge. I think equality for racial equality, gender equality. These are huge issues, and I think we have to dedicate shows and shows and shows to them.
Yeah, yeah. And there
So
was always going to be something I'm going to talk about, but I just want to. I mean, it's easier for me, especially if you maybe ahead of time, you're like, okay, the main subject will be this, and then I can have maybe my thoughts a little more prepared because
okay.
then I can answer you more correctly.
No problem at all. Cool. Yeah, we'll do it that way, definitely. But I do like your natural ability to meander through various topics. So, that's always much appreciated too.
Um, the Corona, being at home, and how I wanted to be more creative, how that brought out some stuff in me. Um, so I had this idea to do like yearbooks, but like of pop culture, sports, race, like for every year. So you would have like, for example, like 1990, and you would just have like kind of like a multimedia yearbook that you could like
Okay.
leather bound book, but you would just have like photos and different topics. So like I was looking at like 88 or 89, like it said like the top things that happened in that year. And it was like the Soviets left
Oh,
Afghanistan. And I remember like in the 90s or early 90s, like that the Afghan freedom fighter hats were like really big in DC.
okay.
I don't know
All
if you've
right.
seen these
All right.
hats, wool hats, because like the U.S. kind of like supported Bin Laden and and the Taliban like to get out the Soviets. So when
Mm,
that happened, there's like a huge Afghan movement, pro-Afghan movement in the U.S. But that's when they were training like the future terrorists and giving them guns and all this.
mm.
So I would just like there'd be like a little section on that and just kind of like maybe describing like different parts of the that year and kind of like relating it to like now and some not always relating it but like also talk about like like the biggest song that year was like Michael Jackson blah 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 and then you kind of related to how that really affected pop culture and kind of have like maybe 2 pages of just like pictures short snippets of like interesting facts about this certain time period of that year and then you would
Mm.
just so you have like 1990 and you like 91 92 and you have like this is the year like Michael Jordan won his first ring, blah blah blah, and they also won in Barcelona. And then you can tell a story of something that happened in Barcelona, like actually like this. The Lithuanian basketball team didn't have enough money, but they had two of the best centers in the world. Arvydas Sabonis, who played like
Mm.
14 years, his son plays for the Bulls now,
Okay.
and this other guy that played for like New Jersey, I forget his name. So the country like didn't like I guess the Soviets had just left and they were really struggling on money to go to the Olympics. So one of the guys was playing in Golden State in San Francisco, talked to Bob Weir, who's like a guitarist for the Grateful Dead. You know the Grateful Dead is
No.
the Grateful Dead is like a band that played from the 60s until the 90s and they still have certain guys who are still playing today and they're a huge impact on like the hippie movement in San Francisco and across the United States and even across the world. Now it's like a huge deadhead subculture that kids, even kids who are 18 are getting into now and it's kind of like peace, smoking weed, um, this type of lifestyle. And
Okay. I have to point out I'm very ignorant on things such as, the sort of, movement related music, and different musical forms
okay.
and genres. So, you're going to have to, yeah, educate me on that as well.
Yeah. So the Grateful, so they started in like San Francisco, and they're really, they were kind of a little bit different, more like bluesgrass than like the Beatles or like Jimi Hendrix, the same time period.
Okay.
They were known for playing touring, so they were a huge touring band, and they would play like 36 shows a year, and they play for 4 hours. They play two sets, and they play the same songs, but the songs were never in the same order. Or sometimes they would play certain songs back to back, and they would improvise with jazz, funk, bluegrass, and the guitarist would just kind of improvise and just play for like one song could be 20 minutes, 25 minutes. The song could be 8 minutes. It all depends. And so they have these culture people that would follow them around, and they ended up building their own society around the shows because people would go to the shows and they would set up vendors and sell food, sell beer, sell drugs, sell clothes. Um, and then you would just go to each show to each major city in the U.S. and you would see the same people at these shows, and you would know like, oh, that's where I need to go buy beer from this guy. He always has like cheap beer in his truck, or this lady makes empanadas. Um, and I actually got into the when Jerry Garcia, who was the head guitarist, lead guitarist for Grateful Dead, he died in '96, and this band Fish from Vermont was kind of coming up in the '80s, and they were like huge Grateful Dead fans, and so Vermont's like very liberal hippie state, and they're at the University of Vermont, and they started playing at a local bar, and it's called Nectar's, and then they ended up kind of taking the torch in '96 and kind of doing the same thing, and they have their own culture, but they were able to. I mean, the Grateful Dead's still worth a lot of money, because they're still playing. Some of the guys are still playing, but I mean, these guys went from college students to millionaires, and all doing it, but not being mainstream, which is the coolest part. They're not. It's not mainstream,
Hmm.
but they do sell out Madison Square Garden every New Year's for 4 nights.
Okay. Okay.
you
All
know.
right.
So, yeah. So this is this whole subculture, and I'm lost. I was telling you about the Grateful Dead
The year,
because,
the yearbook.
yeah, exactly. Um,
And so that you said that somebody approached the Grateful Dead because of
oh yeah, so
the
Lithuanian.
basketball team.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. So one of the players was playing in San Francisco, and he approached Don Nelson, who used to coach the Mavericks. He
Yeah.
coached Nowitzki when they won the championship. I think he
Okay.
did, but he coached Dirk. He was like one of the Dirk's first coaches, and Steve Nash was playing there. Anyway, so Don Nelson was a coach, and one of the players was like, yeah, like we want to go to the Olympics, but we don't have any money. And he's like, hey, well, he got it. He's looking for people. He asked Bob Weir. I don't know how, because I guess I don't know why. But also, anyways, so he asked him, and Bob was like, yeah, we'll write him a check. So they went to the Olympics, and they ended up beating the Soviet Union for third place, um, which is like a huge deal. And that's the year, like in '89, the Olympics, the U.S. wouldn't allow professional players, so they lost to like Russia or the Soviet Union or some. I think
88, 88.
'88 they
Yeah.
lost,
Yeah.
and so then they changed the rules, and then in '92 in Barcelona,
The
all
dream team.
Jordan, Magic, the Dream Team,
Yeah.
and they won. It was like huge for pop culture and Michael Jordan in Europe, and it was like spreading basketball over Europe. It was like big, and so the Lithuanian team didn't have any money, so he approached Bob Weir. The Grateful Dead wrote them a check, and they were wearing tie dye like Grateful Dead, like the Deadheads would always wear tie dye shirts to the concert, and like it was like part of their wardrobe, like this hippie, like hippie stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Like if you Google like hippie, they're probably wearing a tie dye shirt. So they made their warm ups like Grateful Dead concert shirts, tie dye, but it has like a Lithuanian. It says Lithuania basketball
Uh-huh.
team, and it has like a skeleton. Like it's like one of the logos for the Grateful Dead, like dunking a
Mm.
basketball.
Okay.
And
I'll have
so
to YouTube that.
when they got the third place, they're like, hey, like come up to the stands. They put the Grateful Dead shirts that the Grateful Dead gave to them on when they went to the podium, and you can see a picture of all of them wearing these shirts, and it was like no one understood the story behind it. And I read it like on like Bleacher Report a couple of weeks ago, and a
Okay.
couple of my buddies who are a fan, they were like, "Oh man, that's like the coolest story."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's kind of cool how like this little thing happened, and they won the bronze medal, and they didn't have them, and like this band paid for them to play in the Olympics.
Yeah, that's a brilliant story. I mean, 92 Olympics, I was in Spain at the time, not in Barcelona. I was on a family holiday in the south of Spain. But I was already playing basketball at the time, so it was really interesting to watch the Dream Team. So I had to stay up until about 3 or 4 in the morning because it was set for the American market, obviously. And it was brilliant. So yeah, okay. So obviously in '92, the Dream Team was not the only big story behind the Olympics. So maybe with your sort of yearbook idea, you can introduce some of these the random stories that people don't really know about, such as this.
That's what I'm exactly what I would do. Like these, like how like the Grateful Dead is connected to the '92 Olympics, and like stuff like that. Just trying to find these weird facts, and it would kind of be like a coffee table book, easy
Okay.
to read, but cool pictures, random facts of those years, and trying to connecting stuff.
A lot of research, a lot of research. But I guess
Oh,
I guess if you open it up as like a where sort of people public members can also add their stories and so on, then you have other people do the research for you, and you just pick the ones that you think are most suitable.
Oh yeah. Or do you mean like send out like a people like, hey, like send me something that happened in 1992 or like surveys or something, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it could be like you could start it as a blog basically, and set up, I don't know, each year from as you say 1980 or whatever down to up to today, and then each individual can add from whatever part of the world they're in, whichever language they'd like to speak in, or communicate in, and then you can. I'm sure there'll be people who have lots and lots of very interesting stories that nobody's heard of. So I mean, what you just said there, yeah, I
Or you
love
could,
basketball.
like
I had no idea.
like even if say like they were like you could have a story someone said like they partied with like the dream team and then they could like give in-depth like info about what they were doing like in the during the party, like well that guy like yeah he's a woman, he loves it or whatever, he's a big drinker, he was drinking before the games.
Okay, like historical gossip.
Exactly, like it wouldn't all be that, but like trying to like add, or you can like
Okay.
talk about Wayne Rooney, be like, I remember that time Wayne got caught with the grandmother or whatever. Remember that story?
No, I never heard of that.
Yeah, he got caught with like at like a.
I'm a Man United fan. Of course, I
No,
heard.
oh yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, so you would put stuff like that in there, and like have the picture and just have like funny picture of Wayne Rooney, like.
No, we can't, man. Wayne Rooney is he's a responsible dad now, man. We can't have that kind of stuff. Yeah.
He got arrested at the airport in D.C. for being too drunk.
Now that you could put in because yeah, that's quite entertaining. I don't think if he was even aware that you're not allowed to be publicly drunk in some parts of the US, I guess.
Yeah, they were like going to a game or something like DC United. He just like met them at the airport, and he was just wasted. And they're like, "Sorry, sir, you can't get on the plane like that."
Oh man, I mean that's just like the 80s football culture in England. But yeah, okay. All of these things are, these are very, very good topics that we're gonna have to indulge in future episodes. But yeah, this yearbook thing, it definitely
I
it
want to do
gets.
like videos, like a video blog, but I think it makes it more difficult, like getting the video. But I think we just make like a book, and then you could like have each year, and then I really want to sell it.
Yeah, man. Well, I mean, you could also just have a QR code in a book, and people can go with it on their phones, and then you can link to a video. You don't have to have every story that has a video, but just a few videos that they can go
YouTube
to.
channel that goes with it.
Yeah, why
Yeah,
not?
sure. And you can just connect the YouTube channel to it. You don't have to do anything.
No, no, absolutely not. I mean, the technology is there. They just use their mobiles, and you have your YouTube channel. End of story.
Oh wow. Yeah, this is how I'm gonna get. This is my new thing. I'm just gonna get a loan from the German government that says I'm working on a project, and
Yeah, well, why not?
yeah,
Yeah, if you can do it, then good luck to you. And you can always tell me and whoever listens to this damn thing, and you can tell them about it too.
yeah. I just wanted to bounce that idea off, like get your feedback.
Definitely, yeah. Especially, I'm really, really into these, sort of, not necessarily only the charitable angle, but just doing a nice thing. And there's no connection whatsoever between this American band and the Lithuanian basketball team. But at some point, somebody says, damn, we need to get these guys over there, and
Yeah,
it's a random event, and that's just cool and that's entertaining, and I think there's a need for that. There's a need for the positive stories at the moment. I think so. You're definitely onto something there.
yeah. And it's just like, and like that's just a cool story, and it relates to history, sports, and music.
Definitely, and if you can't unite people behind those elements, then okay, we're gonna have problems as a society. So cool. All right,
But,
good.
but you see where I went from like from the whole Afghan, like the Soviet Union thing, how that affected that as well, like into the basketball and then music, like it's all connected. You see that?
Yeah, yeah.
Because
I
in
mean,
Lithuania, they couldn't get to there because of they were like because the Soviet Union left, they finally were like separated.
mm,
That was the first time they had their own team because most of those guys played for the Soviet Union in the last Olympics.
yeah.
It was the first time with their own team. So like this whole thing was affecting like it went got all the way to some hippie band in San Francisco.
Well, which is which is brilliant. You know. So yeah,
I
I mean that's the
just need
drama.
like 1,000 of those stories. That's why I thought doing it by like a year would make it easier than you just focus on 1 year, and then it's a lot easier to like do the balance instead of doing like 5 years or one topic.
No, of course. Well, I mean, why would you limit it to a certain topic? If you can, I mean, there are millions of stories that never get told. You know,
Yeah,
so if you have an open element where obviously you'll do your own stories and research, but if you have an open element where other people can come in and tell their stories and have that opportunity, then people will learn about these other events.
and I call it like cultural yearbook.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, and even like when I was in Kenya, like visiting my brother, there was a group of guys like all in the same age. A lot of them who were born in the mid '80s to early '90s. All their names were Michael because Michael Jordan and Michael Jackson were huge. So like
Yeah.
all these guys all over Africa like named Michael, and some of them are named Michael Jordan or just
Yeah, it's
talk about that, and you can just have like a little spot. I don't want to do too much writing, more visuals because I don't like reading a lot. But I think if you have nice paragraph little snippets on stuff on each page, like in between the pictures, it would look nice like that.
mm. Well, I mean, it's funny that human nature is the way that it is because historians have discovered that at some point in I don't know if it's the sixth or seventh century, but in certain parts of England, it was very popular to call their boys Arthur. And this is one of the main indicators that somebody who was very, very important was called Arthur. So maybe this is what derived the legend of King Arthur.
Yeah.
So human nature repeats itself, in this case as well.
King Arthur.
Sorry?
There's no such thing as King Arthur.
No, but there was somebody who was quite prominent in certain parts of England called Arthur, but
Sure.
not the legendary King Arthur that was created by some French author a couple of hundred years later.
I had no idea.
All right. Well, Bud, look, Happy New Year for tomorrow. Have fun at home on your own, I hope.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be in touch, don't worry. And I'll
And
send you a link to this.
all right, man. Happy New
All
Year.
right. Happy
Cheers.
New Year. Stay safe. Take care. Ciao.